everyone. It's Amanda with the Content Marketing Institute. Thanks for joining me for this Monday Ask the CMWorld Community live stream, where each time we dive into a new topic with an awesome guest from our CMWorld community. This live stream is brought to you by the Content Marketing Institute. If you don't know who we are the leading training and education organization for all things content marketing. You can head over to contentmarketinginstitute.com, get all kinds of education, check out our latest articles as well. All right, today's topic and guest is based on our ContentTECH Summit, which is coming up in May. If you weren't able to make it to the original dates in March, lucky you. We ended up pushing the event back until May to give all of you a chance to attend. So I hope you'll take a look at it and register at content.tech. If you stick around to the end of the live stream, I'll give you a special code to save a little bit on your ticket. Okay. As always, you guys know that I love it when you check in with me like Andy does every week. She checks in and say hello. Give me a virtual wave. Let me know where you're joining us from. It always makes for a more engaging live stream if we hear from all of you. All right, so before I introduce today's guest, I'm going to ask you a little question of the day. How is your brand at creating compelling visual design? Do you rock it? Great. Tell us what you're doing right. Do you struggle with it? What are some of the challenges if you do struggle? Do you have a dedicated person or a team that creates it? Or maybe some members of your marketing team are just kind of doing the best they can on top of everything else they have to do? Let us know. We want to hear how it's going for you, and we'll love to share it. I see Brian is joining us as well from Rochester, New York. Pierre is here. Great. We have a lot of great people on today. Someone else from Twinsburg, Ohio, which is actually just down the street from me here. All right. Today's topic, the demand, I think we all know this, for visual content is really off the charts these days. And that means content marketers need to continually produce engaging media to keep up. But as many as you know, there's a lot that can get in your way. Lack of resources, lack of skill set, siloed teams, budget, and that can kind of lead you to sacrifice the quality for efficiency. So what if we tell you, you can empower your marketing team with an easy solution to make sure your content is consistent, your brand looks, displays properly, everything. So we're going to touch on that today. Hopefully help you create some compelling visual content. All right, now to the guest. Tired of listening to me talk. Amy Balliett is a senior fellow of visual strategy at Material. You may have heard of her before. She is known for her work at Killer Visual Strategy, the agency she founded. Under her leadership, they became a leader in visual content communications with clients, including Microsoft, Boeing, Adobe, Nikon, the list goes on and on. Now she's over at Material, which was named the #1 global strategic consulting firm by Grit in 2021. Hello, Amy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
This ought to be fun today. We have a lot of great people joining us. Jared just joined us from Sacramento. He's on the West Coast, as you are. Jeff says he's been learning about atomic visuals to clearly communicate complex content in a way that enhances text-based content. Maybe we can dive into that in a little bit. All right, first question, Amy. Actually, first question. You had a candy store and an ice cream parlor when you were 17 years old.
I did, yes. Yeah.
How did that happen?
I think that like a lot of entrepreneurial stories, part of it was a huge accident. I feel like we sometimes accidentally fall into a business. So I was 17 years old. My dad was part of a board of this little vacation resort in Vermilion, Ohio, trying to find somebody to come in and take over this already existing central store. The central store had acted as an arcade at times, a general store, a candy store, all these different things over the years. I joked and I said I would run it because I didn't think he'd take his 17-year-old daughter seriously. And instead, he woke me up the next morning a Saturday morning at 8 a.m., which if you know any 17-year-old, 8 a.m. on a Saturday just isn't fair. But he woke me up at 8 a.m. on Saturday, took me to Key Bank, and got me a business loan that he co-signed on. And we bought the business.
Oh, wow.
And then it was up to me to run it. And the agreement was to give it back to the park at the end of 2 years. So we bought kind of the rights to run it for a couple of years and own it for that time period. And everything we did with it during that time. And I say we because it was my dad's dream. So he was kind of playing out his dream through his kid. So he had a lot of input. But I learned so much. I worked 80 hours a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day, my junior year of high school and my senior year of high school. And then ended up saying, okay, I need to go to college and I'm going to do college year round. So I can't keep doing this.
Sorry. Yeah.
But made enough money to help pay for college and to buy myself my second car because my first car was a beater to begin with.
Wow, that is great. Yeah, that's a lot for a 17-year-old, but yeah. I'm sure that set you up for success with your business later on.
I learned a lot.
Well, let's talk about design and the importance of creating good design. And you say production quality matters more now than ever before, and that brands should always prioritize quality, which kind of surprised me, but because like all this user-generated content, half of it's like blurry, whatever. So why do you think it's so important?
Part of it is this user-generated content, actually. So first, I always like to start with a very important statistic. This statistic, I think, encompasses it all. The fact is that 94% of first impressions today are based on the design of the content that you produce. So that means that as somebody's trying to learn about your brand or service, if they're learning about it through a low quality motion graphic or a low quality infographic or something like that, they're going to come away with a first impression that your brand is not committed to quality. And you might be thinking, okay, no big deal. They can learn about my brand through something that's not visual, but 91% of audiences demand visual content as their primary, secondary, and tertiary forms of information delivery. So that means that when they're trying to learn about your brand, they're looking for visual content to learn about your brand. They're not looking for text-based content to learn. They want to kind of get that information as easily as possible. And good visual content transmits information to the brain 60,000 times faster than any other form of communication. So it makes sense that we'd be looking for visual content. But now let me talk about the user-generated side of things, because this is the other reason why our expectations for visual content have just gone up and up and up. The fact is we are all creators today. We all have the power of great smartphones and then all of the apps that come with them to take a photo and up-level it through the right filters, or to take a video and edit it together in all these unique ways, and even add things like lower thirds and really cool transitions that we couldn't even do a couple of years ago. Now it's super easy to do with different apps and different tools. And so the fact is everybody has the power to be a creator today. Most people are creators in one way, shape, or form. They're either creating for their own family text thread or for TikTok or for Instagram or what have you. And so we now know what it takes to produce okay content. And some people really know what it takes to produce amazing content. Those are the people who really stand out on TikTok and things like that. So since we know what it takes, we know what the effort is, we expect that the brands that are vying for our attention are going to put in much more effort than we would put in ourselves. Because as consumers, we have choice like never before. And so that means brands have to earn our attention. And that means they have to do something better than what we can do on our own. And that's really a huge reason why quality trumps quantity any day of the week now.
Yeah, you made that point in your Content Marketing World session. It was kind of like an eye opener to me because I've always kind of said like, just start, just get going. But I never really, okay, you want it to be better than what my mom is putting out there or whatever. So
definitely.
What are some of the challenges that you've seen brands face when it comes to creating great visuals?
There are sadly too many challenges. I'd say in kind of order, budget is a huge challenge. Time and resources, that's another huge challenge. Those two challenges tend to stall even the best of brands. And then there's also kind of this bottleneck challenge as well. If you have the budget and you have the resources, then you kind of get this too many cooks in the kitchen bottleneck where everybody wants to weigh in, because what's weird with visual content is everybody thinks they're a master of it. Everybody thinks that if they can imagine it, then they can do it themselves. And so you get this kind of situation when you're producing content where people who normally wouldn't chime in, they often will chime in. And if you're not following the right process, that can derail a project so quickly, and you can end up just never getting content out as a result. So I'd say those are the three primary issues that are making it very hard for people to produce good content on a regular basis.
Then what sort of mistakes are you seeing with their content, like what with their visual content?
So some key mistakes I see. A lot of people will turn to DIY tools, and DIY tools are doing their best to make things as foolproof as possible. I'll use Canva as an example of the DIY tools out there. It's one of the best, but it's not entirely foolproof. I mean, you can work with a template, but that doesn't mean that you're sure that all of your colleagues are working with that same template or the same colors or the same fonts. And so one of the biggest mistakes is uniformity in design, where brands are putting out just things with so much different type of quality and so many different disparate styles of design that it never feels cohesive or like it's the same brand. Another big issue is mixed illustration styles. This is one of the biggest problems I see. We often will turn to stock illustration because we can't illustrate ourselves. And DIY tools rely very heavily on stock illustration. But the problem is every DIY tool is using the same stock illustration packets. So you have a couple of things happening. First, your competitors can be using the exact same illustrations that you are. And second, if you don't have a design eye, you might not realize that one stock icon you chose doesn't match a stock illustrated character, which then doesn't match a stock scene, and so on. And when you clutter a design with these mix mash of illustration styles, it actually really turns the audience off. So those are just two examples. I mean, I could go on sadly for hours about the common mistakes I see, but those are two really big ones that are really common for everybody.
Yes, our creative director, J.K. Kalinowski, could also go on about all of that as well. If you're just joining us, we are here with Amy Balliett from Material talking about a foolproof content design system, which we'll touch on in a moment as she's presenting this at our ContentTECH Summit coming up. Andy says, we try to make it very clear when we are doing content reviews what people are being asked. What people are being asked to comment on. Sometimes we just want feedback on the text or certain parts of visual style as well. Michael says he's got your book, Killer Visual Strategy, and he loves it. So go out and get Amy's book, as well as listening to her speak at our events. All right. So like you said, there's so many obstacles marketing teams can face, right? So to create this good, compelling design. So how can they overcome it? What are some steps they can take?
So there's a number of steps to take, and I'll kind of touch on the order of those steps. The first thing you need to do is really codify a design language. And you might think, okay, well, that's my brand right there. And your brand's going to be a very good foundation to start with. But you need to build from your brand and identify things that most brand books don't. What is your target illustration style? And how does that illustration style change based on target audience? You might have one illustration style for, your A audience, the audience you want to capture all the time. but you might have a secondary audience with a different illustration style that you're going to go after. And you might choose that illustration style based on the demographics of that audience, what speaks to them the best. You also need to identify your data visualization style as well as your iconography style. These are things that often aren't in brand books. So we call them a visual language. It's taking things up a level from your brand book and really codifying this aesthetic system. First and foremost, saying how you're going to use data viz, icons, illustrations, and then how you might use fonts going forward. What will be your font choice every time you're doing a heading? What's going to be the size, the weight of that font, and the look and feel of that font? What colors will you use? What colors won't you use, etc. Once you've codified that visual language, then the next step is to create a way in which your entire team can produce content that always adheres to that visual language. Now, to do that, you have to do a couple of things. First, you have to get a designer or two. It doesn't have to be permanent in-house designers. It can be an agency, it can be some freelancers, but you have to actually hire some people to create hundreds of custom illustrations for you or custom icons. It doesn't have to be hundreds. It could start as 10 or 20 if you want, but a bunch of different custom illustrated characters in different poses and custom illustrated scenes and all the data viz you need for the year. Take your time to get that designed first, and then find the right tool to build what we call a content design system. Now, at ContentTECH, I'm going to be talking about what I think is the best tool for this. It's a tool called Figma. And I'm going to be walking people through exactly how to do this in Figma. But the fact is Figma is one of the best tools out there to build what we call a foolproof design system, in which you take in all of these illustrations, this foundational work, and you build templates that anybody on your team can work with, where they can click on text and change the text, or they can click on a placeholder and change out the illustration in that placeholder. They can click on a piece of data viz, change the data, and the data visualization itself will change. It's taking that idea of Canva, but creating it in a way where it's in-house and custom and only usable by your team and your brand. This is something that you could also leverage a tool like Canva for, but not as easily. And so, I'll be talking about Figma primarily, but I'll also be talking about how you can do this in Canva and a couple of other tools you can consider. But ultimately, there are tools out there that will help you create the right design systems that anybody who's not a designer on your team can use without breaking things. And that's really what's important to do these days.
You've definitely given me lots of things to think about, as we do have a creative director, but there's other people trying to do things as well. So definitely some great stuff there. Have you heard of this, as Jeff mentioned earlier, this idea about atomic visuals?
I have not. In fact, when I saw that comment pop up, I took a little note and said, okay, I'm going to Google what atomic visuals means. And I don't know if it's specifically a company or if it's a methodology. So I'm going to look it up and learn more.
Yes, I don't think I have heard that either, Jeff. So thank you for bringing that up. Someone else had asked more about that too. All right. So Amy, thank you so much. As she said, she's going to dive a little bit more into the system, the Figma system, and other ones you might be able to use to get your team all on the same page. And Amy, you have spoken at ContentTECH, the virtual event. What are you most looking for in San Diego? So ContentTECH's in San Diego this year. What are you looking forward to?
I'm so excited to be at a real life event. My first real life event coming out of this pandemic was Content Marketing World in October last year. It was so energizing. It was so exciting. When it comes to ContentTECH, I'm excited to see more people be out and about and really have that opportunity to actually get back to some normalcy. There's something about, presenting virtually is a very easy thing to do because I can wear pajama bottoms while I do it. But getting up on stage, watching the audience reaction, and then being able to kind of pivot what I'm saying based on that audience reaction to really ensure that I'm giving the entire audience what they're looking for, that's something you can only do in real life. So I'm so incredibly excited to just be out there in front of people, having a great opportunity to see everybody who loves Content Marketing Institute and loves attending these conferences.
Awesome. So ContentTECH Summit is May 31st through June 2nd. Head over to content.tech. If you use this little code here, save 100, you can save $100 on your registration. Amy, where can people find you? You have a great book. Where else can they find you?
So my book is it's on Amazon, Killer Visual Strategies. I do have a second book that I have yet to do a lot of promo on, but it's at agencygrowlab.com. It is a starter kit to help you start your own agency. So it's an ebook along with a series of templates and tools to use to start your own agency if that's something you're looking to do in the future. That's at agencygrowlab.com. And then check out my LinkedIn learning courses. Last year, I had the opportunity to redo my infographic design for beginners course and really make it something that is much more hands-on for people. I also redid my data visualization best practices course for the exact same reason, to make it something that's really hands-on for people and to speak more to marketers so that marketers could really take these courses and learn how to do the work without being a designer. So definitely check out my LinkedIn learning courses as well. And I have a couple new ones coming out this year I'm excited about, including some courses about helping designers think like marketers.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. You can see Amy at ContentTECH Summit. You'll be able to see her at Content Marketing World. So everyone have a great day, a great week, and thank you for joining me. See you